What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. I am your host, Brandon Baker, joined by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. We are brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us there on YouTube, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Twitter, wherever you get your podcast at, under 30 Minutes of Hell. We appreciate you guys taking some time to talk Arkansas basketball with us. And it's been a minute since we've been in for an episode. Arkansas has gone 2-0 since we last recorded an episode with a 10-point win over Abilene Christian and a 16-point win over UNC Wilmington most recently. I really have liked what I've seen from the Hogs over the last two games. I know that we have been
For sure.
pretty negative about them on a lot of these episodes because there's not been a lot of positive to talk about, but they have shown tremendous improvement on the offensive side of the ball specifically, I think, over the last couple of games. Definitely trending in the right direction. And I think a huge part of that has to be the early Christmas present that they got for themselves in Keyon Menifield. The transfer is unexpectedly available after the fall semester ended, and he has been really just a burst of energy and of offense for
Mhm.
this team. Great scoring, decision making, like I said, energy and burst and decisiveness. Brings a lot to the table, and we've really seen it on the offensive side of the ball. I still think there are things defensively that we can maybe work on. It hasn't been perfect even in the last couple of games when they've looked good, but I'm very excited about what Keyon Menifield has brought to this team. So I wanted to open up first to hit right off the bat and ask what do you guys think about Menifield and how has he really helped the Hogs over these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think that he's going to have a much bigger impact than what we originally expected. We last week or our last episode, whenever we talked about him, we kind of said, well, he'll be a good energy guy. He'll give us that burst, like you mentioned, Brandon, whenever we need it. But we saw that he is quite the opposite, especially in the Wilmington game, putting up 32 points. But his something that's really impressed me about him is his decision making ability. He did have three turnovers in the game. I'm not gonna glaze over that, but he was able to just run the offense. And Muss even said in the post game presser that the team kind of changes under his leadership and takes a new role, and they really enjoy playing with him, which I think says a lot about your point guard. So very excited with how I see Minifield trending upward over the next few games throughout the season. I think he's going to end up being a major piece to this puzzle.
And that being said, about Must saying something about his leadership and everything, we've talked in the past about who's going to be that guy, who's going to be the guy. We've went from Tremont Mark, from Brazil, from maybe even Battle, or even Devo being that guy. And something is different with Minifield when we say, I think he may be that guy, because he's the only one that's showing those leadership qualities, the one that will always play hard, no matter if they're doing well on the offensive end or not, the one that will get after it, draw fouls, do whatever it takes to get a win. And even though he had those three turnovers, I think he was still plus 17 overall. And he just showed me that he's the guy we've been waiting on. He's the leader we've been waiting on. So I'm super excited that he's in and he is fitting in so well this early in his playing time. It takes some people months of these non-conference games, and he got it together within three. And I loved what I saw. We kind of saw some of that when he played for Washington, just occasional bursts of scoring. But I think he's going to be more than just scoring as we go on. We may
For
not see
sure.
him score 32, who knows, again, but he is going to be that energy guy, that hype guy, the leader on the team. And I'm super excited to see him grow with the team and how the team grows with him.
And Matt, one thing that I noticed that he does really well for this Hogs team is he pushes the break and he pushes the tempo, and that's something that the Hogs desperately need. We're
Right.
best when we're in transition, and he's been the guy that he's really controlled our pacing, something that we all talked about couple episodes back where we're playing a little too slow and we don't really have an identity yet. And I feel like these last two games have really helped solidify that identity and helped us to where we can be that athletic, fast-moving team that we know we should be with his leadership and drive down the court.
And I think it was one of the commentators during the UNCW game said, this team isn't, well, we've said this team isn't like any other team Muss has coached. This isn't a defensive oriented team. This may not be a team that we're going to see win 60 to 54. It's going to be a team that we see win 101 to 96. And we're going to just, you hit us with a three, we're going to hit it right back and just play pure offense, score more than the other team at the end of the day. And although we have some guys that can lock down, play some good defense, we're an offensive team. That's just end of story. That's how we are, and that's how we need to identify and play as. And I think Muss has kind of come to terms with, all right, we're not the best defensively. Let's score some points. And Menifield has helped that tremendously, I think.
Yep, definitely, definitely. And I'm concerned. Concern might be a strong word, but I'm interested to see how that offensive type approach carries over into SEC play, because when you have these non-conference teams, I think you can, fight fire with fire and outscore them, even if you're not defending the way you want to be. I'm curious when we hit an SEC team that has a little bit better defense, maybe has more offensive weapons, kind of how that strategy plays out. But it is worth noting that UNC Wilmington was a very good and efficient offensive team even before they played us. That 90 points wasn't just out of the blue for them. They're averaging like 88 a game or something like that before they played us. And some of that was against lesser competition, I fully understand, but they did beat Kentucky. They've put up efficient scoring against everyone they've played. And none of that is an excuse for us to allow 90 points, but I don't think that it was just atrocious defense and end of the world kind of stuff. That was a pretty good offensive team still.
And Brandon, Muss did speak very highly in that post-game press conference about their two guys who dropped 28 and 25, so that they're next level guys and have tremendous talent. So I agree with you completely. It's not ideal that we're giving up 90 points and over 53 points to two guys, but it takes a lot to get that kind of praise from Eric Musselman.
And one of those guys, I don't think was even expected to score that much, and he hasn't scored that much in the entire season so far. So I think it's just another one of those Bud Walton effects and the luck factors coming in.
Yeah, and one of the things Muss talked about, I'm trying to remember the guy's name, trying to pull him up here. Phillips, number 2 Phillips, their point guard. He was not a 3-point threat coming into the game, so there was plenty of times in this game where you would see guys like Tremont Mark matched up with him so that he could just kind of roam free and be a full-time help side defender. They were giving him the 3-point shot as a game plan. And this game, he just happened to hit a lot of them. I mean, that's just, you live with that. When that's your game plan, you find the guy that you think you can, if he beats us from downtown, we live with it because he has not shown it all season. And he played well. Like I said, he hit, what was it, 3 out of 4 from 3 in that game. And he was 1 of 8 before that on the season. So just one of those things that you have to kind of live with. But like Matt said, it just kind of happens in Bud Walton sometimes. But a couple other performances I wanted to point out in that last game too. Jalen Graham has really been showing up in each 3 of his last 3 games. In his last game versus UNC Wilmington, had 16 points and 6 rebounds, which I think is great. We want to see him continue to be aggressive on the glass, consistent as a rebounder, and continue to grow as a defender. But those 16 points on efficient shooting, he's averaging over 11 points and over 3 rebounds over his last 3 games, as well as 1.7 blocks per game, which is fantastic. And I know that just pure block shots are not always indicative of being a good defender, but that's still improvement. That's still what we want to see out of him consistently so that he can be on the court and we can reap the benefits of his offensive ability. So I think that that's a huge thing, that we see him continue to grow and fit into this offense, fit into this team a little better. And then Devo had one of his best games against UNC Wilmington as well. Very well-rounded, the way that Devo likes to do it. And I think Muss said in the post game that Devo has some kind of biological clock or something because he always elevates his game right around this time.
Yeah.
But he had 14 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 3 threes, 71% from the field, just almost a perfect game all around. The kind of thing that you expect from Devo every now and then. So you love to see that in a big offensive outburst from the team as a whole, that he was right there and a part of it, and maybe getting his feet under him a little bit as we head into SEC play. And then one other thing that thought was kind of surprising, I tweeted about it at halftime, that we saw a lot of guys get into this game. We saw Denijay Harris get in early. Joseph Pinion was in there. L. Ellis got in early, and he's been kind of iffy with his minutes, but we didn't see any of Layden Blocker in the entire first half. Played less than 9 total minutes, and I kind of wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the lack of Layden Blocker minutes. Was this just a matchup thing? Do you think there was something else going on, or maybe what was going on there?
Well, I was also incredibly surprised that we didn't see any Layden. Uh, we've talked about it, this episode, last episode, every episode that we've had. Our defense is not good. I mean, period. Our defense isn't great. Our one guy who can sit down and defend didn't play at all in the first half. I think Musselman did say that it was more of a matchup situation to where that's why he pulled like the starting five out early and put a new starting five in. So it very well could have been a matchup circumstance. But in my opinion, when you have a guy that he's a defensive guy. That's what he's used for. He can sit down and guard the best player. He's quick. He's shifty. He can do that defensively. It's surprising to me that he didn't see the court at all in the first half.
I agree. It was shocking. I mean, we were what were we down? Were we down 8? Was it? Were we down at half? I can't remember. That was
We weren't down at halftime, but we were down in the first half, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pull that up.
But anyway, we were down and we were in need of some defense. They were just hitting shot after shot after shot. They were playing very well offensively, and we needed somebody to sit down and guard. So I was shocked that we didn't see any Layden Blocker. I personally thought maybe it was a little bit of conditioning. Maybe he wasn't all there. I mean, he's a freshman. It was Christmas break. Maybe there was something going on there, but he came in and he still played a role in that second half. Even in those 8 minutes, he got some free throws, and I was still impressed with him. I think this is kind of an uncommon thing that we will see. I think Layden's going to get his minutes later on, and especially during SEC play. We're going to need an aggressive guy like that on defense.
Yep. And the Hogs were down 6 points just over 11 minutes into the game, or just over 10 minutes into the game. So yeah, they were down a little bit early. I agree. It was kind of surprising to have him out because he has been a consistent defensive force. And maybe one thing that maybe played a factor in that, in those 8.5 minutes he played, he did pick up 4 fouls in less than 9 minutes. So maybe it was just this team was a very high free throw shooting team. Their best player is averaging almost 8 free throw attempts per game coming into this matchup. Maybe it was just we can't foul people handling the basketball. Maybe it was as simple as that. But regardless, it was nice to see him get in and get some minutes in the second half in a game where we saw some pressure, but we had a big enough lead that it was okay if he made some mistakes in the full court. I think that's a valuable experience for him to get his hands on the ball and lead the offense, help lead the team when there's a little bit of a cushion. So I was happy to see him get some of that experience there.
For sure.
All right, well, that was Arkansas's last game before they dive into SEC play, and we're going to come back with a quick preview of SEC play, including the first few games and some NCAA tournament talk after a quick break.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season, and we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
All right, welcome back. Arkansas is headed into SEC play now. They went 9-4 in their non-conference schedule. According to the net rankings, they're currently 10th in the SEC and 8th on KenPom if you look at those rankings there. Most of their metrics are still relatively not great, but they are trending upwards. I know that they've cracked the top 90 in the net rankings recently. They're moving up. Their offense is looking better. So hopefully they continue to trend in the right direction as they now have a lot of big opportunities in front of them as they head into SEC play. And that starts this coming Saturday with number 25 Auburn coming to town, kicking things off with a ranked matchup in Bud Walton Arena. I'm sure that the fans will be there and be loud. I'm excited to get it started and watch that game. But yeah, they have just a brutal start to the conference play, to the SEC play. I think 5 of their first 7 games right now are currently quad 1 opportunities. In total, they have 10 quadrant 1 opportunities still remaining on their schedule. 3 more quad 2 opportunities, and then 5 combined quad 3 and 4 opportunities. And so they have all the opportunities in the world. We've been saying it all along. They haven't looked great in a lot of their games, but they've looked a lot better lately. The thing to hang your hat on right now is that if they get it turned around, they have so many opportunities against good teams that if they win some of these games, they'll be right back where they want to be. But they've got to win the games first. So I just kind of want to talk to you guys a little bit about maybe what are some of the biggest games on the schedule, and maybe at the end of this we'll give our overall SEC record predictions and where that leaves the Hogs on the season, and then we'll talk a little bit about NCAA tournament implications. But right off the bat, I wanted to point out with so many quadrant 1 games left on the schedule, I feel like the 8 games that are quad 2, quad 3, or quad 4 are essentially must wins at this point. And if you lose any of those, then you're going to have to pick up some quad 1 wins that maybe you weren't expected to kind of cover your tracks, because they've already dug themselves a little bit of a hole. And so you've got games like Georgia and South Carolina are the 2 games within that first 7-game stretch that are the not quadrant 1 opportunities. So those are must wins. You have to come up and be prepared for those games. Cannot let something like that slip and come out lazy against one of those teams just because they're not a premier SEC team right now, because that is the quickest way to drop out of tournament contention, is if you drop another game that you're not supposed to lose.
100%.
And so those 2 are the ones at the forefront of my mind right now in terms of big games that are must wins. You got to put away all of the teams that are not currently in quadrant 1. And that includes teams like you get Missouri twice, once at home and once on the road. And they're currently like number 100 in the net rankings. So rivalry aside, that's one of those games that you can't drop. You can't lose a game like that, even on the road. You really need to get that win and then maybe split the quadrant 1 games or win as many of those as you can, but you just can't drop anything that's not quadrant 1. Joey, I'll throw it over to you. What are some big games on this schedule that you've got your eye on right now?
Yeah, I've said it in the past. Arkansas tends to show up for these huge, important games. They show up big for these games. We saw it with Duke. But when it comes to some of these lesser teams or teams that are expected wins for Arkansas, we tend to become complacent, and I like to use the phrase, we play down to our opponent. And I am concerned for a couple of these games because we've got some big ones on there that I do predict that we'll win, but we also have a couple that I'm pretty iffy on. So I really want to look out for away games specifically. We know we're going to rock the Bud. There's no question about it. I think I have us losing 1 game at Bud Walton this season, and it's to Kentucky. So I'm a little concerned for our away games against LSU. Very strong defensive team. It comes at a time where we're expected to win against a team like that. And I get concerned anytime we play in a different location to a team we're already expected to win, which sounds crazy, but it's just been our experience with the Hogs, you know. Definitely want to look out for LSU. I think Brandon, you touched on Georgia. Definitely want to look out for them and Ole Miss. All of those, I think, are games that we should win, but I would not be surprised if we dropped one or two of those. And if we end up dropping, I'll just use LSU for an example. I think LSU's a quad three team. If we end up dropping that away game to LSU, we're in deep, deep trouble. So I really want to look at the Razorbacks just coming in hyper focused, ready to win on those away stretches. Not get complacent whenever they're not at home or rocking with the Bud Walton crowd. But those are three games that I'm really looking at coming up.
And I'm just going to go ahead and start it off with Auburn. I think a win against Auburn could very easily be kind of the catalyst to get us into the tournament. I think you win against Auburn, a top 25 team. I get we're at home, but that's a good win anyway. I think that gives us the momentum to go in and who would be next? Georgia.
Georgia.
And then Florida after that. I think those two games, especially Florida and Georgia, those guys, I think we could beat them. There's no reason why we can't, and I think Florida's a quad one opportunity as well.
That'll be
And
tough on the road for Florida.
Yeah, it'll be tough, but you just got a good win against Auburn, hopefully, and you have that momentum. I think that's kind of the catalyst. I get it's early, it's the first game of SEC play, but that win right there puts the opposing teams on notice. Like, okay, this Arkansas team may not be as bad as we thought they were. Because let's be real, we haven't looked phenomenal. We haven't looked like Arkansas. So these teams are coming in and they're like, oh yeah, we can beat them at Bud. We can beat them good. They lost to UNCG. They got manhandled by Oklahoma for a while. I mean, these are teams that already have it in their head. I think we can beat Arkansas. So I think if we put the other teams on notice, it makes it that much easier for us to win these other games coming up. So that's my opinion on the SEC schedule, especially these next few games. Put them on notice on the very first game. I think we can see ourselves in the tournament. But if we lose that Auburn game, we may be falling down a hill there. So
And
it would be interesting to see.
Matt, I completely agree that I think I don't know if I want to go as far as to say Auburn's a must win, but riding off the momentum of the last two wins, having a very important, exciting game at Bud Walton against Auburn, who we've seen in the past has been a thrill to watch at Bud Walton. Going into back-to-back away games, if we can go into back-to-back away games with a three-game win streak of playing good basketball like we have and a win against Auburn, I think we're much more likely to take both of those away games against Georgia and Florida. But if we lose to Auburn, going into back-to-back away games can be tough. It can be hard to overcome, and I do think that can be kind of the spark plug to how we expect to see the Razorbacks finish SEC play. I agree with you.
Yeah, you guys are both right. I think that Auburn game is huge. It's hard to be overly confident in it because Auburn has looked very good, and like we've been saying,
Very
Arkansas is figuring some things out, but they still have had their fair share of struggles, probably more so than we've seen even in previous Musselman years. I know they always have this struggle, but we've been preaching that it's a different team, different problems, different dynamics. So I think that is definitely a huge one. I think I tend to agree with Joey that one specific game may not be a must win at this point, but it could be a season changing win if they do get it. It could be very, very important. I think they still have enough opportunity. We were talking about earlier, 10 different quad one games. They have enough opportunity to still dig themselves out of that hole, even if Auburn isn't one of those wins. But man, it would give them a huge leg up if they could start off strong in SEC play. Real quick, I wanted to go through earlier. We went through and made our predictions after the non-conference. We all three sat down and looked at the SEC schedule, predicted out what we thought Arkansas would finish. And I'll go ahead and share our final SEC prediction records, and then we'll talk about some of the games that we predicted differently. Joey and I both have the Hogs going 11-7 in SEC play, which would have them finishing at 20-11 overall, which I think would be enough to get them in the tournament. It might be like a 10 seed, but that would be enough to get them there, especially if they won a couple games in the SEC tournament. That would be huge. And then Matt has them going 12-6, which puts them at 21-10, which I think is pretty comfortably in the tournament. Could even be up to like an 8 seed if some of those wins are against really good teams. So I just wanted to go down through here. I think we've got like 4 games that maybe 5 that we have predicted differently, and we've already been talking about one right off the bat. Auburn, you guys have called it a win, and I'm skeptical coming out in the first SEC game. That's going to be tough even at home. But like I said, I don't think it sinks the ship. I think they still get to 20 wins, even if Auburn right off the bat isn't a win. Especially that first stretch of 7 games is just going to be crucial. They got to start strong, even if Auburn isn't a win to start with. And let's see, the next couple of games we have different back-to-back games in late January at Ole Miss and Kentucky at home. We are split on those games at the moment. Both exactly what we've been talking about. Both of them are quad 1 games. At Ole Miss is going to be tough. They've been hanging around in the AP poll for a while. I think they're number 22 right now. And Kentucky has been playing out of their minds, even getting them in Bud Walton Arena, repeating what we saw against teams like Duke and even Purdue in that preseason exhibition is going to be tough. And so that's understandable that we're a little bit split on those two, because I mean we've been talking about it all season, all non-conference, that I think the Hogs are talented enough to compete with whoever they play against. They just haven't put it together really for a full game up until these last couple games. But those two are big, key, important games as well. And then the last 2 games we have that we're split on is LSU at LSU in early February, and then Tennessee at home in the middle of February. We're split on those games. So all of those are big games, all 5 of those. Got to start strong and got to win some of these that you're not expected to, some of these quad 1 games like we're talking about. And I still stand by what I said, that I think anything that is not a quad 1 opportunity, you can't lose it at this point. You put yourself in the position where you have to win the games that you're supposed to win and keep climbing up those records or the metrics and the standings and everything like that. I think the Hogs can be okay. I think that they've shown enough life in the last couple games to give me hope that they can be okay. Nothing is set in stone at this point. Not all of our problems are relieved, but I do have more hope now than I did 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, 7 days ago. So is there anything else about this schedule that you guys wanted to point out? I kind of covered a bunch of the games that we've been talking about, but we're going to get into it a little bit more in a minute. But
Yeah, I think you covered it well. I think that we're in a good spot right now. We just have to come in hot for these next 7 games, 8 games.
Yep,
Agreed.
like we've been talking about, Arkansas has a brutal stretch to open SEC play, 5 Q1 opportunities in 7 games. And so I just have a real simple question for you guys. What does Arkansas's record need to be over those first 7 games to keep them on pace to make the NCAA tournament? And I'll go ahead and say I think that 4-3 has got to be the minimum. I've seen some people say that it's more than that. Some people might say that if you win 3 big games that you can still get there. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, Brandon, I completely agree with you. We definitely need at least 4 with must wins against Georgia and South Carolina, like you said. I'd be perfectly happy, ecstatic even if we got 5. But this is tough competition, as we've mentioned. So I don't know how confident I am with us getting 5 wins. It very well could happen. We could click and win 5 games, and that'd be great. Put us in tremendous position for the rest of SEC play. But definitely need at least 4. If we end up getting 3, like you mentioned, I don't like the look of the tournament for us. And this would be an entirely different conversation if we weren't faced with, some of the losses that we had with UNCG specifically, Memphis and OU. All 3 of those games, in my opinion, are games that the Hogs should have won. So we wouldn't be, I feel like we wouldn't even be having this conversation if we picked up those 3 wins. It'd be a whole new talk. But definitely need at least 4 of these wins in the first 7.
I'm gonna actually be the most I guess, pessimistic out of the group, I'm going to say we need 5. That is just solely because I'm thinking less on, all right, let's look at these statistically. I'm thinking of momentum going forward. And if you get 5 of those, you build more confidence than if you do 4. And this first stretch is tough, but we still got a lot of games coming up that are after that are really tough as well. I mean, Tennessee's on the books there as well, and if we can somehow manage to win that, I'm one of the ones that said we're going to lose that one. But if we can somehow manage to pull that off, I mean, that just makes it all the better. You're looking at a better and better seed from there in the tournament. But I think 5 is my minimum. I really want to see them win 5. I think we can get away with 4, but definitely not 3. I think 3 you're looking at not making the tournament, and that's all I really have on that. So win 5 for me, please. Make me happy.
Yeah, and I guess I'll go ahead and list off the games. I should have done that to open it up, but we've been talking about a lot of them. Starting off with Auburn at home, then you go at Georgia and at Florida, back to back. It's a tough road trip. Then you get Texas A&M at home, South Carolina at home, trip to Ole Miss, and then you get Kentucky at home. And those are the first 7 games.
That's a tough 7 games, man.
But that's no different than any Arkansas schedule ever. So
that's true. That's true. And then like Joey has mentioned earlier, Georgia and South Carolina are the quad 2 games in that stretch. So the other 5 all quad 1 games. And I know we've been talking about quad 1 and quad 2 a lot, and that is meaningful for the selection committee, but just win the games in front of you is all that they can really worry about, regardless of where the other team is ranked. You know, if you win the games, all these worries go away. But it is good to know what you're up against and the opportunities you still have available to you. And if anyone is wondering, Joey and I do have the Hogs going 4-3 in this stretch, and Matt does have them going 5-2. So as pessimistic as it might seem that we are, all of us believe that we will hit the minimum that we need to be on pace and set the tone for a good SEC stretch and make the tournament, it seems. Like I said, all of us had 20 total wins after predicting the SEC schedule, so that's usually pretty comfortably in the tournament. So that's a good sign. I think we've all had a little bit more renewed optimism over the last couple games with how good the team has been offensively. But these first few games are going to be very, very telling. You guys talked about it earlier. Auburn is huge, could really set the tone. So I'm excited to get into that game. I'm excited to get into the whole SEC stretch. Really hope that the Hogs have found that core rotation and maybe the offensive scheme to work around and to build off of, with Menifield really handling the ball. Maybe we see Graham really start to thrive more in his role. Really interested just to see where this goes and how they can build on it, because they have given me hope lately. I am excited to see how they play and how they continue to grow as a team.
Yeah.
That's all we have for today for this episode. Remember, you can find us at the Field of 68 Podcast Network on YouTube. You can find us everywhere else at 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. I've been your host, Brandon Baker, with Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. You can find us on Twitter as well. We really appreciate you guys taking some time to talk Arkansas basketball with us. Really excited to get into SEC play and see how these Hogs progress and develop, and hopefully they do figure it all out. But as always, go Hogs.
We'll